Welcome back to Bleav in Softball. I'm your host, Jenna, and however you got here today, whether you downloaded the audio version on Apple, Spotify, or somewhere else, or you're watching on YouTube, thank you and welcome. Subscribe and rate the show wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow us on Instagram and X at Bleav in Softball. That's BLEAV. And don't forget about the merch. You can click the link on our bio on either page or go to shop.bleav.com to purchase. There are 3 different shirts for you to choose from. All right, let's go through today's batting order. First, we'll be covering our bases. I'll share some call-outs. Then we'll head into today's interview with Alex Powers. She's an ACC Network analyst, Florida State alum, but also very driven in everything she does. And I just respect the hustle, which we'll talk about. And then we'll bring it home and wrap up with some final thoughts. All right, let's go. Covering our bases. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for betting on all the madness. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from college basketball to a $200,000 bracket contest, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every Cinderella story to every hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. And the game continues here when it comes to college softball. So just an update on what I've been up to. So I was actually able to call the Syracuse-Stanford series. They're in person for all 3 games, and it really did sort of summarize this new era with conference realignment for me. Because usually in the past, you wouldn't see a team who's literally from New York face a team who's from California in a conference matchup. So this was very much east to west. I was calling it this coastal collision, trying to tell the story. It was a clash of the colors too. Cardinals, the mascot for Stanford, orange, the mascot for Syracuse. So relating very much on that level of having colors as mascots. And then the Battle of the Block S, because back in the day before Stanford added the tree in its logo, they were nearly identical. When I lived on the East Coast and I would wear my Stanford parka around, people would ask me if I went to Syracuse sometimes, just given where I was in the Connecticut area. Sometimes red can look a little orange in the right lighting, it made sense. And I don't know if I'm just trying to make fetch happen with this, but I also think at the same time, we got to own it. This is a new phase we're in. So let's think about what these matchups look like and what goes into them. I also really enjoyed getting to know the Syracuse program and their head coach, Shannon Depking. Just on paper, the Cardinals swept the orange, but there's just way more to it that goes into what they're doing every day as a staff and the players and everything that goes into it. And they haven't even practiced on a real field yet at this point because of weather. So just interested to see how they evolve over the rest of the season. And then I did do a post-game interview on day 3 after game 3 with Jade Berry from Stanford, and that's on D1 Softball social channels if you want to check that out. Pretty cool. Asked her about being in the football stadium, for example, and she gave some insight. And then, can't leave out what I ultimately selected as my play of the week on the D1 Softball podcast this week, which was Allie Clements, the catcher, senior, bulldozing an umpire to make the catch behind home plate. And I'll just leave it at that because you should tune into the podcast to actually see the clip. Probably could see it on the social channels, whether it's mine or Stanford Softball's. But speaking of the D1 Softball podcast itself, there are more new episodes out with my co-host, Amanda Lorenz. We interviewed the South Carolina head coach, Ashley Chastain Woodard, going into their series at OU, and another one where we just recap everything in week 5 because there was so much action. So check it out. You can find it on the D1 Softball YouTube or download it on any audio platform where you get your podcasts. And then coming up, I'll be at Stanford all weekend again, but still somehow a little bit all over the place. So I am calling 3 different sports in 3 days, and I'm excited about it. So women's gymnastics senior night is on Friday. Softball tournament on Saturday because it is their bye weekend in the ACC. And then baseball is hosting Duke on Sunday for their ACC conference series. Conference play across the country, of course. So I'm going to be watching closely and just let the chaos continue, especially with the rivalries that we know and love, but then also some of these new matchups in this post-realignment world. And someone else who's keeping a close eye is today's guest. So let's head into the interview. She is an ACC Network analyst, Texas Monarchs Pro Team General Manager, two-time All-American at Florida State, and 2016 ACC Player of the Year, Alex Powers. I'm so glad we were able to do this, Alex. This is great.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. I'm excited too.
And we were talking a little bit before we actually jumped on about basically the fact that you've been grinding it out pretty intensely, you know, calling, what was it, 16 games opening weekend, 12 games last weekend. Just how are you? How's your voice right now?
Yeah, I'm surviving. I'm definitely thriving some days too. Some days are better than others. But yeah, this week I've been catching up on a lot of sleep, trying to avoid like that mid-season sickness that I typically would get as an athlete. So here we are.
Oh my gosh, I am with you there.
Yeah.
Seriously. I don't know about you, but I'm like, I have throat lozenges, like preventative throat lozenges, you
On
know?
deck.
Yes,
On deck.
exactly.
Yeah. I've got like the cough drops, and then I do like mints, and then I've got like a tea. They bring me Claritin sometimes, like all the things. So of
Yes.
course water too, but
Well, yeah, that, yes, hopefully goes without saying.
right.
And I know you obviously partner with one of my colleagues at D1 Softball with Eric Lopez for a lot of the games you call at UCF, at least. And it's fun to listen to you guys call games. I always enjoy it.
Thanks. Eric is one of the best in the business. He makes it a lot of fun. He's like, I joke all the time, he's a softball encyclopedia. The guy knows
Oh my,
everything. So it's
Eric the
crazy.
encyclopedia. Yeah, that's a very accurate way to describe him. I agree with
Yep.
that. Yeah.
Yep. So
That's why every year he does bracketology,
yeah.
and he's so close to like exactly right every time. I'm like, I don't understand how you can do that, but when you're an encyclopedia, I guess that's how it works.
Yeah. Definitely. He makes it fun. And that's, I think, the most important thing, well, like being in the booth, like it can be long days, it can be hard games, and you're trying to like create all this conversation and stuff. So it's so important to have a good partner that can kind of like have good banter and good dialogue. So
Yes, 100%. And Coacha is also somebody who has been on the show, who obviously you're close with and have a great relationship with. But some other Florida State folks like Jesse Warren, Megan King, I actually finally got to meet Coacha in person at Clearwater. And for my tie-in at least, she was a longtime assistant coach at Stanford before my time. But a lot of the older alums just absolutely love and adore her. And I feel like every Seminole I've talked to feels the same way.
yeah, one of the best people I know. When I go call games in Tallahassee, I stay at Coach's house, like because she obviously has this big house and doesn't have a whole family living in it. So she like gives us the whole upstairs anytime any of us players go and need a place to crash. And just getting to talk the game is so cool. Obviously, her heart is unmatched, but I love that she gives us the ability to like still be involved and learn and evolve our knowledge of the sport too. Cause like we've only been out for, well, several years now, but
Yeah.
still evolving and changing and getting better all the time. And to be able to continue that learning for us is so important. So I'm just so grateful. I love her to death.
Do you find it to be kind of funny when, if you're doing an in-game interview, for example, with Coacha, you're like, I know you so well, but we're doing this sort of professional conversation with other
Yeah.
people listening in.
Yeah, definitely. And it's always fun when you get to do that stuff. Like even because I'll get to go to Bristol sometimes, and like during postseason, like if Florida State wins or something, like we'll have Coacha on air and do like the drop-ins or whatever, like post game, and they're like, "Hey, Coacha, like we've got Alex Powers in," and she's like, "Oh, hey!" Like it's so much fun. Like her smile, like we get to just banter, and again, like even having that inside knowledge, like just you get to ask better questions and it makes everybody, I think, a little bit more excited and just more special. So,
I feel the same way.
yeah,
So Jessica Allister at Stanford was an assistant when I first came to Stanford. So you kind of know their personalities too. So you're like, this particular question, maybe not the right time for that one. Maybe we'll go this other direction,
totally. Totally. But yeah, it's fun. It's all fun nonetheless. And we do that a lot with like the in-game interviews, even like at UCF and stuff. Like you develop good relationships with these coaches, and there's like a mutual respect of like, hey coach, like not going to ask about this. Like say they haven't like obviously gotten many hits or they're freaking struggling. Like you obviously stay away from that stuff, but it's like, you're able to keep it fun and light. And you're like, hey coach, don't worry. I'm not going to ask about this. And they're like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Like, so it's funny.
Yeah,
But
because you can still cover the game and, give the viewers inside information without straining that relationship, like you're saying.
totally.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. But looking around the ACC, so obviously I'm excited about this season with Stanford and Cal, who I've covered a lot in the Pac-12, but now moving to the ACC, I'm excited. You know, to me, even being from the quote unquote outside in previously, it's been such a conference on the rise. And everybody sort of talks about, at least in recent years, the core four with Florida State, Duke, Clemson, Virginia Tech. But there are others in the mix that certainly would have something to say about that. And then, of course, Stanford and Cal joining in. So I would just love sort of your high level thoughts on the landscape just of ACC softball.
Yeah, obviously, like you said, it's improving so much year to year, even. And the parity in the sport across the nation is something that I love the most. Like on any given day, any team can be beaten. We've seen that already this season. We've seen it the last couple of years. And it's really just an absolute dogfight. I think the evolution of the ACC in particular has been so cool because you went from obviously this conference, even when I played, like they didn't obviously have like the Dukes and the Clemsons as teams yet. And so then in the last, 7 years, 8 years, these teams come to life and then they're having such quick success, which just shows again, the ability to recruit well, you build programs, you invest in women's sports and give them the ability to have a platform and the ability to have good funding to really build a program. And they can reach success really quickly. Obviously, it's a testament to their leadership as well. But it's been so fun to watch. And then the other thing is right now, like, for a while it was like a hitter's game. And right now I think the ACC is so dominant in the circle. The amount of no hitters being thrown, like UNC, we just mentioned last week in our podcast at the time, at least. Again, I haven't looked the last couple of days with games at midweeks and stuff. But last week, like UNC was the only school in the country that had 3 different pitchers throw a no hitter so far in the season. Like crazy. You obviously have people like Emma Lemley, just absolutely stunner. You've got Eden Bigham. You've got obviously people for Florida State. Cassidy Curd is crushing it. Florida State has like a pretty good deep staff. Like, and so there's several arms there. Like the parity in the sport, especially in the circle, is phenomenal. And then you have people like in Syracuse and stuff, like Sydney O'Hara getting to coach there. She was a phenomenal pitcher, obviously from the ACC, giving back to the program. Obviously, Stanford's doing really well in the circle too. And like, there's just so much good stuff going on. But the pitching is dominant. And I think that's where, of course, a hitter at heart, like, I mean, my shirt even says like Elite Hitters Club over here. So like, I'm a hitter through and through, but you got to tip your cap to the pitching because it's so freaking good. So
100%. And you like to see that, honestly, too, because it is such a hitter's game now compared to at least what it was in the past. So when you do see, at least from my view, that just outstanding pitching performance, you do appreciate it. It's hard not to.
Absolutely. The technology too, and I'm sure at some point we'll mention this further, but like the technology is ridiculous. And I think that that's where I've asked some of my coaches, like on the calls that I do before like games and stuff in that upcoming weekend, I'm like, hey, like, is today's athlete just that much better? Is this the best offensive program that you've had? And they're like, no, not necessarily. Like the athletes are good, don't get me wrong, but they're smarter. And it's because of the technology that we have now going into scouting. We can replicate pitchers, we can replicate looks. And it just makes them that much more prepared headed into weekends. So
it's a good point because I do feel like I've observed hitters, even pitchers defensively, let's say too, they just have more of a plan than maybe they used to. Whereas before it's see ball, hit ball, which sometimes, we need to get back to the basics and let's on that, of course. But there is a plan when you're going up against certain pitchers, certain matchups and things that we just, scouting reports were a phone call to your friend who played them last week, it's totally different.
Yeah, I think, and then even like I get to work with young athletes as well and like lessons and stuff. And mind you, they're obviously not in college yet. So they're learning it and they're not exposed to the elite level coaching at that Division I level and other college levels and stuff. But like getting athletes to understand that it really is like, you've got to stick to what you're good at and your strengths as a hitter, but you also have to know what you're getting in the circle. And that's where scouting is so important because your approach changes, whether it's game to game or arm to arm, if you have multiple pitchers coming into the game that have different looks. Yeah. And I think that the adaptability of the athlete is just that much quicker now at that top level. And that's what the young athletes sometimes struggle with is because they don't know how to adapt yet. And they just think, oh, my approach is this. and my approach is this all the time. Like, no, your approach has to change and adjust a little bit, right? You're always trying to leverage your own strengths, but you've got to match those strengths, match what you're facing, and kind of like complement each other well. So,
Right. And obviously you break all this down with your co-host, Brittany McKinney, on your Up the Coast podcast. And I did have her on the show too. So just a lot of mutual friends that we have, apparently.
Love it.
But I remember her saying too, when you guys came up with the name, you were thinking about it in mind with the ACC, but then, I think you said, it still works, even with Stanford and Cal. It's like up the other coast too, right? Like, we're good.
We didn't specify which coast. We just said up the coast, up and around the coast. So yeah, I would be more curious to know, like, from your perspective. I feel like that'd be really hard to be those two schools. Like, it's hard to be a Florida school traveling out west once, maybe twice. But like, how about you guys traveling back and forth to the East Coast a lot?
Yeah, I think they're still figuring it out, right? Like Stanford just had its first trip out to Georgia Tech, for example. It's one of those things where I've asked coaches, I've been like, so have you talked with some of the fall sport coaches and those staffs to understand what worked for them? There's all this thought around, do they stay on West Coast time, even though they're on the East Coast? Like, what exactly do they do? But then I think it was the Stanford men's soccer coach who mentioned to me, he was like, well, I mean, they spend a lot of time either playing soccer, training, doing homework, or watching Netflix. And now they're still doing those things. They're just on a plane more while doing it. Yeah. So it's a little more manageable than maybe they anticipated, but they're still figuring it out, But I think the landscape of the competitiveness of the ACC, I do think Stanford and Cal are really an interesting, pair to insert into what was already going on there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I definitely think they're enhancing it, and I'm excited to see how they compete against some of the continued like top schools and stuff in the conference. And it's been really fun to see. Obviously, Stanford going through, I say, some adversity last year. Just quite frankly, the transfer portal and NIL, I say getting the best of them for one person. It doesn't make or break a team, but I love how they've responded. And I think it says so much about their culture as a program and kind of that, so what, like, let's go mentality. And you just got to tip your cap to Coach Alistair and what she's building, and the girls that are obviously on the roster and surrounding themselves with really good people, really talented people.
You basically just summed up her personality too. Just so what, let's go. That's probably, if I had to pick 4 words, those would be the words to describe her personality. And it's interesting too, because, Clemson's coming out to Stanford this year. John Rittman was my head coach and Jessica Allister's head coach while at Stanford. And so a lot of her philosophy, not all of it, she's made it her own, but a lot of her philosophy obviously derives from her experience with him as both a player and a coach. So to see those unlikely reunions too, that we wouldn't have ever thought we'd see in a conference setting, is pretty fun too. Even Coacha, right? Like Coach Alistair knows her, Coach Rittman, Coacha used to coach together. Like, there are so many different things that you never would have thought that are a nice little pleasant surprise.
I always joke, like, what is it? The world is 6 degrees of separation. The softball world is like half a degree, because everybody knows everybody. Like, if you know this person, then you know their whole family. Like, it's just crazy. But yeah, it's really good stuff.
You're 100% correct. Yeah. But I have to ask as well, you mentioned how Eric makes it fun, right? Calling games. Obviously, you and Brittany have a lot of fun doing the podcast too. And I can pretty much assume that there are obviously some like delirious moments. You're calling games together, you're covering the ACC, you're doing this podcast together. There's got to be some hilarious stories. So what are some of the core memories that you two have?
So obviously things that are for the most part are like remote, and we're not typically in the same place, but like ACC tournament, we get to be together for like that week. If we go to the World Series, we're together for the week. All I can say is like us summed up is like, am I allowed to say bad words on this podcast?
Yeah.
Like, I'm an absolute shit show sometimes. And Brittany is like my mom. Like, Brittany like has it together. And Brittany's like, it's okay. Like, just get your stuff. Like, we're going to just show up here and like, just make sure you're on time. And like, I'll always be there. I'll always be ready to go. But like, I mean, behind the scenes, like I'm a mess sometimes. And that's because I do try to like juggle a lot. And I'm one of those people that I told Britt, like, I'll text her sometimes to hold me accountable. I'm like, you'd be so proud of me. Like, I said no to something today. Cause like, I just spread myself thin. And that's like my biggest weaknesses. And Britt is just like the woman that keeps me in line sometimes. And so I'm super grateful for her. Like, and so as it pertains to like funny stories and stuff, like it's just me being an absolute idiot sometimes. Brittany just like busting my chops, and like I said, just keeping me together. She makes fun of me all the time, like for random stuff. She makes fun of like how much cream I put in my coffee, just like all the things like that my OCD like nature needs and has. Like, you know, she's just like super simple and super like on point, on task all the time. And yeah, so I'm not, but that's okay. We're
I love
figuring
it.
it out. It's better and better.
Yeah, well, hey, we're all figuring it out. That's what I learned as we get older too, is that nobody really has it together. People are just better at making it seem that way. So maybe she's just awesome at that. But I love that you and Lincoln essentially are her children.
Yeah, she's just got like a 30-year-old child. That's all. Like,
It's
it's
fine.
okay. Her and Taryn can adopt me whenever they're ready. So,
Exactly. That's such a catcher thing too, though,
yeah.
taking care of your teammate or your, you know, like, and
Yeah.
obviously they have that dynamic in their marriage, but with you two, even as like a position player yourself, it's like she
Yeah.
still has that catcher vibe. I love that.
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny because actually we joked about that like just a couple days ago. She's like, it's okay. You just kind of remind me of Taryn sometimes, like with just that, like, you know, you got a lot going on. And I was like, yeah, but you guys chose this. Like, you know, her, like my boyfriend, like I joke all the time. I'm like, you guys picked us. So like you've got to deal with the crazy. So
Yeah, it's not your
yeah.
fault, right? They
Yeah.
made that decision.
They
That's
knew what they
hilarious.
were doing. Yeah. No.
Yeah,
So
they signed up for it. Accountability, you know?
totally.
That's hilarious. Well, I also have to say I have appreciated, speaking of, you know, the ACC tournament, World Series, you guys have some great outfits. I just have to give a shout out to that. I very much appreciate it.
Thank you. We have a lot of fun. That's like what I look forward to each year of like getting to go like do the studio stuff on screen. Cause you know, like calling the games behind the scene, like I'm showing up in a polo and something comfortable, like on the bottom half, depending on how long I'm there. Like, am I wearing like trousers that are athletic today? Am I wearing like a skirt or whatever to be like, you know, that golf vibe?
Yeah.
But when you're on camera, like it's a lot of fun. You obviously like live and die for the outfits, the hair, the makeup, like all the glam. Brittany, I don't know that she cares as much because, like I said, she's just chilling. But she does love to get dressed up a little bit, and like we had a lot of fun last year. Just with all the people, the artists that do our hair and makeup, like they're great and make it so much fun. So,
Yeah. Real MVPs right there.
oh, totally. I mean, I don't know how they do what they do, like dealing with us all day and like they're touching us up, and then they're constantly like they just are super helpful. So, like I
Yeah.
said, it's like having 3 moms on staff, actually 4 if you count Britt. So it's
Yeah.
couldn't ask for anything better. But
That's perfect. Do you have some favorite outfits? I'm sure it's hard to
ooh.
narrow down, but
Honestly, just in general, like anything that's comfortable, but also like looks kind of like chic, you know? So like a good little, I say like a little set. So like I love a short set with like a blazer over top, but it like has to be like super good fitted and stuff. Like, so if it's a little cropped, you obviously wear your blouse that kind of covers whatever, and then like nice loose shorts that are business-esque. Is always a vibe. And then the shoe game is super important depending on like what location. And somehow I always get stuck on the end. So like you can always see my shoes and like, I don't know, it is what it is. So yeah, there's that. And then I do love a good dress because again, like flattering, but also like airy and comfortable when you're sitting on set for like 12 hours in a day, kind of waiting for these games to finish.
yes.
And then of course, like you have to have the pop of color too. So anything that can give me a mix of those like 2 to 3, I'm totally in for, because I like to push the limits a little bit. I'll be like, ooh, can I wear this color? Well, I don't know. We're going to try. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Why not have
you
fun
just
with
got to
it?
go. Yeah, you have
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
But
Do you and Brittany ever coordinate, or is that too much?
ooh, we have talked before, like once we've gotten to places, also with like our host. So it's typically 3 of us. And a lot of the times we get a girl too. We've been super blessed to work with Kelsey and Taylor the last few years. And once we're like there, wherever we're going, like last year was Durham, we do talk like, okay, I've got something pink, I've got something green, like I've got something this, you know, blue. Like, so we do try to coordinate like whether we want to be like kind of in sync or if we're just like, hey, like let's try to spread it out. Cause like say I wore blue and then like Duke's playing, like I got to be mindful. Like, are we all wearing blue that day? Cause this could look a little set up, you know?
Exactly. And it sounds
Yes, you just
silly
want to be
to outside
mindful.
people, But it's
Yeah.
so true. Yes. It's funny because when I'd be working with Pac-12 networks, if I would say hello to Coach Alistair, like before or after the game, I'd be in a neutral color for whatever
Yeah.
team that they were playing. And she was like, I know you have to do that, but you look better in Cardinal. I'm like, okay, but still you are mindful of all the little things like that.
You have to be. And because like it's a persona thing. So not to say you can't ever wear a color, right, of the team, but you can't all
Sure.
be decked out in the same color on championship day. Like it's just not a good
Right.
look. So just things you got to keep in mind, and really spread your outfits out accordingly. So
Yeah. We talk about in a playing sense too. You look good, you play good, you win.
absolutely.
So I feel like you look good, you feel good to do your job
Yeah.
now
Yeah,
too.
absolutely. And that is definitely true because then the people that are watching at home, you get better content. So anybody that does watch, you can thank us later for the good outfits because really we're doing it for them. So just kidding.
Exactly. It's a gift to
Yeah,
others.
right. But that is a thing. So
It's 100% a thing. Yeah. I'm
yeah,
so glad that you were willing to kind of go down that rabbit hole with me because no one really talks about it that much, that openly, but it is like internally something you talk about?
absolutely. Always.
Yeah. But you said it, you have a hard time saying no, which means you also do a ton of different stuff. So obviously you're a broadcaster like we've talked about and a podcaster, but a real estate agent, a GM for
Mhm.
a pro team, you played pro too. There are so many different aspects to your career path. How have you navigated all of those things?
Yeah, still figuring it out. So to say I've figured it out is obviously not true. But you just really try to like assess like what do I enjoy doing? And I know that's probably everybody's goal in life, right? Like we do have
Yeah.
to do the things that aren't always the most fun. But I also think saying yes to those opportunities as well, or like pushing through those things, like get us ultimately where we're supposed to be and get us those opportunities that we do enjoy. So I worked like more corporate setting for like 7.5 years. I stopped working there last year. On my eight, like I was about to be there for 8 years, and it was all I've ever known professionally like that. And I just was like, you know what, like something's got to give. Like I wasn't happy. There was a lot of things going, and I, took a chance and really bet on myself. And again, saying yes and putting myself out there allowed for a lot of different opportunities. I thought that making that career shift and move was gonna like maybe impact me in so many ways if nobody's going to want to like work with me or I'm not going to get these same opportunities and stuff because just like playing so much of my identity like was with my career and
Yeah.
all that I was like investing into. Like I went back to school, I got another master's degree like for that job, and all the things that I was doing and pursuing were in alignment with that. But then it's like I broke away from them, and then I was able to get back to like, okay, who am I at my core? What do I enjoy
Right.
doing, right? Outside of that place, just like in softball. And then next thing you know, like, I mean, I'm on walks outside my neighborhood feeling like I'm going to go through like mental breakdowns, and I get random calls like, hey, heard you're not, at this place anymore. Like, is there anything I can do to help you? Like, are you looking for jobs? What are you interested in? And those opportunities like really started to continue. And so with that, I started doing lessons locally. So I was like building my network out here in Central Florida because I also moved like an hour and a half away from where I was working and living previously. And then it's like next thing you know, I build like a lesson clientele of over like 70 kids that I have like, now, which is awesome. Um, I got to meet some great people that are great business owners and really intelligent. I got calls to do things for opportunities out of state of like, hey, I'm going to do this. I want you to be a part of it. And that's how I got started in the pro softball space outside of being a player, like
Yeah.
for management stuff, which was really cool. And then next thing you know, one of my lessons, her mom was like, hey, I don't know if you've ever considered doing real estate, but you do really well with our kids and stuff here. I see you interact all the time. Like, I think you'd crush it in that space. And it's something I'd always been interested in too, but just never gave myself the time or the chance to do it. And so, like I said, I just started saying yes. So next thing you know, here I am today. I've got like 4 jobs and I'm just figuring it out every day that I go. So,
I can relate because
yeah.
I'm the same way. They're more so all of my jobs are sort of within the media space, so they're in the
Yeah.
same industry, but it's not easy to balance it. And I see that obviously you're very driven. And so we do want to say yes. We have to say no to some things to allow us to say yes to other things.
Yeah.
But the fact that you've been able to diversify, I'm a big fan of versatility.
Me too.
Versatility in a player, in life, doesn't matter. Like that is something that resonates with me. And I've definitely seen that with your career. So that's cool.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, life's a hustle and we get to choose our hustle every day. And that's what I firmly believe in. And like I said, I don't know what my days are going to look like. And some days I feel like I'm just trying to stay afloat. But I do think
Oh
like
yeah.
that's the life of an entrepreneur or somebody that's self-employed of like, holy cow, some days you got to spend hours and hours doing things that don't necessarily like equate to money right now.
Yeah.
So maybe
Yeah.
they will down the road too, right? So you've just got to balance. You've got to balance the ways that you earn your income, but also the things that you're trying to grow, knowing that it's going to take a little bit longer. So it's cool though. We're so blessed.
Oh yeah, 100%. Sometimes if I'm stressed, I don't know about you, but I'll be like, think about it. You get to talk about softball if it's something related to broadcasts or a podcast or whatever. It's like at the end of the day, that's what you're doing and
Yeah.
you're building a career from that. So, and anytime I tell myself that, I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, get over yourself, like
Totally. Oh my gosh, I have those days all the time. Like just a couple weekends ago, like we were having really good, like funny stuff happen in the booth because it was just a long day. We were at UCF calling games. We called 5 games that day, and like myself and then the marketing team, like the people that do like on-site game day ops, were the only people that had been there for like all 5 games each day. And so like we're putting in like 16-hour days just at the field, not
oh yeah.
considering the hour drives home, like or anything like that. And they're like, yeah, like this is crazy. And I'm like, yeah, it is long. My butt hurts. Like I'm hungry. I got to go to the bathroom, like all this stuff. Right. But I'm like, but again, like how lucky are we? And so like, you just kind of flip the script and you know where you were, you know where you came from, you know how unhappy you've been in certain times of your life. And you're like, oh my God, I would do this 100 days over. Like couldn't ask for anything better. So
That's what I think about because sometimes I'm also like, well, I'm a good tired. Like sometimes people are like, oh, how are you? And if it's an actual friend, you actually have a real conversation, not like, fine,
yeah,
how are you? You actually get
yeah,
into it a little bit.
yeah.
And I'll be like, I'm tired, but I'm a good tired, if that makes sense. It's like
I
I
like
feel,
that.
yeah, there's value in what I'm doing, so it feels productive in that sense, because it's what you really want to be doing. I don't know. It's different than being exhausted from a job you hate.
Totally. Couldn't agree more. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think I saw in your college bio, so we're throwing it back here.
oh no.
Uh, your career ambition back then, whenever you filled this out, was to be a softball coach or a strength and conditioning coach.
Yeah.
Which, still in the softball world, some people it's like total 180 from whatever they thought that they were going to do, early on and when you're picking a major and doing all those things. But
Yeah.
coaching aspect, you are in that GM world. It's a little
Mhm.
different, of course, but what makes you interested in that more business side of things now?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's even like a little bit changed since what I would have told you a year ago. But I think that's
Yeah.
like the fun part of it is I at my last job where I did spend so much of my time, I kind of like worked my way up throughout the years, and I was there almost 8. So like worked my way up into
Yeah.
different positions, and I really grew an appreciation for you see something on the outside, but like how did we get to this point, right? And that is like the internal business structures. And so I just really like process, procedure, policy, like all of that stuff and the creation of it with like administration and like really trying to put things in place to get that external view that everybody gets to see and enjoy.
Yeah.
Because that's the sexy stuff. Nobody likes the nitty gritty stuff behind the scenes, right? And
Right.
so I feel like that's so much of softball though. Like people see the output and the performance on the field and on TV, but they don't know the hours of practice, of extra work on your own, of being at the cages late at night, of like crying in your bed because you suck some days and you're just like, how am I ever going to get past this? Right. So I think to an extent, like it was just who I am at my core of like, I love the internal behind the scenes stuff because nobody knows what it takes to get to the sexy stuff. Um,
Yes.
and that's how I can define business. And it is, right? And any business owner knows that, I think, having to build something like that up. And so that's how I started there. And then on this side of, like I said, just, opportunities presenting themselves and coming my way and being able to say yes, because I was in a position to say yes for once, was super cool. And just like in other spaces of life, like the pro softball space is still very young, still very needs like nurturing and care. There's different groups doing different things, and hopefully there's a day where it all can align together. And I think that's probably many people's end goal. And
Yeah.
just taking different routes to get there, right? Which again is life. You're just taking different journeys to get to that peak of the mountain. And I think that's where pro softball is. So But I also wouldn't count myself out of like now wanting to coach. And I was asked that same thing last year, like, would you want to coach a pro team? And I'm like, absolutely not. But now I feel like I've got my feet under me a little bit more. And it's like, actually, maybe that would be interesting. Maybe I could like, even if I wasn't the head coach, like maybe I put myself, I'm the GM of the team. Maybe I'm an assistant. I don't know. And let somebody else take the reins, because I don't need that kind of like, I guess ownership and stuff, but I want to be a part of it. And I think that you probably know well, Jenna, is I appreciate the game so much. And like talking the game at the next level is so different than doing my lessons with my young kids.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's even broadcasting, like you got to break it down pretty basic, some advanced concepts for sure. But then like being on the field and learning how to win at those elite levels is completely different. And that's where I want to continue to challenge myself. So I don't know at this point, like I'm still doing the managerial stuff for it, but I don't know. I might like to coach a little bit as well. Even if I just like go out to some practices and, go back and forth with good banter with the girls and like really challenge them on concepts and stuff. So.
Well, you like to learn, which,
Yeah.
that does lend itself to, okay, I'm going to try some different things here.
Yeah.
But it also sounds like you like to build, like some of that nitty gritty stuff, like you're talking about, whether it's a business, whether it's training as a player in the past, whatever it is, it's building something, because there's always aspects to it that are difficult, that maybe aren't our favorite things to do, but it's part of what we have to do if we want to pursue whatever that goal is. So I definitely respect that and relate to that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. It's been hard some days, and it's like sleepless nights, it's the stuff that keeps you up at like 2 a.m., but it's been a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. I can totally imagine that. I have to say, by the way, your name is such a good athlete name, Alex Powers. Like, that's such a good athlete name. So first of
Thank you.
all, congrats on that lottery in life.
Thanks, Mom and
Um,
Dad.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. Shout out to the Powers
Right.
family. Um, but I think of it too as, everyone has their own strengths, aka their own superpower. So what do you think, you've touched on it a little bit, but what do you think are your best powers that you have in life?
Ooh, interesting. Well, one of them, if you can hear them in the background, is my dogs. So hold
Yeah,
on one second here.
sure, sure.
One of my superpowers is my heart, because I
Mm,
think that everything I do in my life, I care so much. It's been both like the blessing and the curse. Just because sometimes you get yourself in situations where you care more than other people do.
mm,
And sometimes that can be hard, right? It can be hard for yourself, like a hard pill to swallow when you're trying to bring somebody like coaching, even like think about the
yeah,
kids you coach. I probably care a lot more about how they do in their career than some of them might down the road, because some of them won't play throughout their life.
yeah.
Something as simple as that. I care a lot with my family and my friends. Sometimes I'm that friend of like, I'm the friend that reaches out to my friends a lot more than they reach out sometimes.
I get
Depends
it.
on life. Life gets busy. And then you take into consideration my crazy dogs in the background. So I apologize.
No, you're fine.
But like doing even like impactful work with them, and I say them because I've got 3 at home, but then I like volunteer time at an animal shelter, and my boyfriend and I have opened our home up to foster dogs through that shelter that are in need and looking for homes. And we've successfully gotten 3 adopted so far that we've been like actually connected with and stuff, which is super special to us. But
That's so
yeah, like
exciting.
it's super cool. But yeah, we're an absolute farm here. Sometimes it feels like we're like blocked out of this room. Otherwise, you'd see like tails walking behind
Yeah.
us. Yeah. So one of my superpowers, to answer your question, is my heart. Another superpower is, I think, just like my no quit attitude. I mean, sometimes like life punches you in the face, and it doesn't matter like what kind of punch. Like sometimes you just get decked straight in the face. Sometimes it's the side swipe that you didn't see coming. But I think my ability to just take punches and keep rolling with it. And again, that's telling throughout softball in my life. I've gone through some hard stuff in my career. A couple of injuries that I feel like are season ending injuries, and sometimes career ending for some.
Yeah.
So my mindset and things like that have definitely been something of power, if you will. And then I think too, for as much as I like to speak and share and whatever, I like to learn. And so I think my last power would be like knowledge is power. And I'm somebody that loves to be a student, whether it's in the business world, whether it's on the field, like a student of the game. I had one of my coaches tell me, like in my senior season. He was like, hey, like, obviously you had a great year last year, like first time being an All-American, you've battled through some really hard stuff through your career. The thing, like your talent right now is as good as it's going to get physically. But one of the things that doesn't need to change is what you learn about the game and how you're able to implement that knowledge. And so I've just been super blessed like that to surround myself with really good people along the way. So I think those are a few powers that I would be like really appreciative of. Yeah.
Those are great superpowers. I love all of those. And even the fact that you're able to reflect on those, because I think it's hard sometimes for us to see things within ourselves, especially if you're hard on yourself, if you're a very ambitious person, it's easy to, maybe see the kryptonite over the superpowers a little bit more. So I think that was great. I love that you were able to reflect on those.
Thanks. Yeah. And that's something too, I talk about that with my kids all the time, like for lessons, like we're always so quick to pick ourselves apart and like, what was wrong with that swing? What was wrong with that hit? Like, well, it was just bad. Okay. But why was it bad? Like, let's talk about it again, like process, right? You got to see like good outcomes at some point in your career. Otherwise you're just going to be like defeated constantly. But I think that equipping like the younger generation, equipping our peers, even like our friends, our coworkers, whatever, with like, let's talk about the process of how we're trying to reach our outcome and start making the adjustments there, because everybody's so quick to criticize and judge like the final product. So
yeah, very true. Very true. And you touched on your playing career in college, which I definitely wanted to get into because you said it, you had some injuries, you had multiple surgeries, and you redshirted for a year. That experience, I've also sort of seen you say how grateful you are for what you learned through that. So what do you think are the biggest things that you learned through those experiences?
Yeah. Super emotional time, like overall. And I think that one of the things I took away with my injury was, of course, the initial, like, why did this have to happen with like to me? And I was angry. I was hurt. I was defeated. I was like discouraged, all the feelings. It was a really dark time in the beginning, but then looking back, and once I was able to get through those initial thoughts, like they always say that your first responses and reactions to anything in life is kind of like just that internal, right? Like you can't really help it. But your second thought that follows is your mindset. Your second thought is your character. And your second thought is ultimately like what defines who you are and how you think. So I allowed myself to feel those initial thoughts. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't like I tore it. It was like, okay, it's fine. Like, let's go. Like I was freaking pissed. But then the second thoughts that followed, and it's just, again, like, I think that it is a makeup thing. Like it's something just innate in your makeup as a person. And something you can learn over time is it doesn't matter what comes my way. Like I'm going to get through it and I'm going to fight the fight, and whatever that looks like, I don't know, but that's okay. Cause I'm trusting in the process. I'm trusting that if I show up every day, that things will work out for me, whatever that is. And whether it was on the softball field that they worked out for me, or whether it was, maybe it inspired me to take a different career path, right? Like you see things happen to people that are super like tragic and all these things in their life, but then it makes them go into the medical field because maybe they want to help people down the road, or just whatever it is, right? To set the stage of what becomes the foundation of your life. And so I just feel like it was some of the best stuff to happen to me, although at the time it felt like the absolute worst and like the world was crumbling. And I think that it gave me an appreciation for the game that I would never have had those things not happened, because I can confidently look back on my career and say, like, yes, there were things I would have done different. There were pitches that I would have swung at or would have taken, right? Like in different situations, like just silly, stupid stuff. But there's not a single day that I regret how I showed up. And there's not a single day that I regret that I didn't give it my all and that I felt like I left a little bit in the tank. And I think softball for that in general. And I think my injuries for that as well, because I don't know if I would have had that same mindfulness had I not endured that kind of stuff.
It's just the growth of going up and to the right too. And yes, that could be measured in performance or results. But to me, what I'm more interested in is the process of you getting through it that even led to those results in the first place, right? Which is what you've touched on. It's like your career was, okay, we're redshirting, and then we're kind of part-time playing while we're still recovering. We're a starter, we're an All-American, and building and building and building from there. And that how of being able to do that, like you said, you mentioned that earlier, it's like people want to know, like, how can we do some of these things, how you allow yourself to do
Yeah.
those things, because it is kind of allowing yourself to do it. You can do it,
Yeah.
but you have to let yourself get into that mind space.
Yeah, like I said, the negative thoughts that crept in, like I don't think people talk about that stuff enough. And what people see is, oh, she was a two-time All-American, she was this, like that, whatever, like all the accomplishments and awards. They didn't
Yeah.
see that, like you said, you know, it was my last practice of one of my seasons in the fall. And then I recovered, 9-month recovery, and then first practice back toward the second one. And that's when I decided I can't take another red shirt. I don't want to take any more time. So with that, like I got cleared in 4.5 months after my second surgery. And I played that first season. I got cleared the second weekend of games in February. I played that first season with 2 knee braces. One, like ridiculous, like Forrest Gump. And then 2, I couldn't run the bases. And that alone is like super defeating. It's like I hit the ball, like I hit, you know, I would be a pinch hitter off the bench all the time. I didn't start that many games, a couple where I was like DP or something. But I'd come in pinch hitter off the bench. You know, maybe I'd get into one, like hit it well. I'd hit it off the wall, single, right? Like you can't run anywhere. So I'm like jogging to first base. Okay, fine. So then I go to my sophomore year. Also, my freshman year is when we went to the World Series. So again, as a team, I was super blessed with great athletes, great coaches around me. And then sophomore season, I lose a brace. I'm feeling better than ever because I'm like, okay, I'm lighter than I've been in like a year and a half, like quite literally with this brace off me. Like, let's freaking go. And that sophomore slump like hit me dead in the face, like the whole season. And here I am, like, I'm just like, yeah, I'm just never going to get it back. Like, I thought I had all this hope. I put all this time. Like, why am I not seeing the results? Like, I hit more than almost anybody on the team, it felt like, because of the time in the training room that you put in, the time that you're putting in, all these things, right? And I'm like, bro, I suck. Like, God bless. And, you know, I'm a 250 hitter, 260, 70 hitter, whatever it was that year. And like, but the expectation that I had on myself, because here I am, like, I put in the time, I put in the work, I trusted the process, and I'm still not seeing it. Like, let's freaking go. And yeah, I was super defeated. I was super down in the dumps. And to act like that stuff didn't exist, I think would be ridiculous. And then it's like, but you can do one of two things, right? You can like crawl in the hole and you can like feel self-pity and wallow in the miserableness that is your life at that point. So that's what it feels like. It's miserable.
It does. Yeah. The world's ending. Yeah.
The world is ending and it's collapsing around me and I'm just going to be suffocated by, you know, the muck basically. Or you can use that and be like, you know what, this is why I'm never going to go back there. Like, I'm never going to be in that place again. I might be defeated some days. I might have some crap days, but I'm going to show up. I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to keep pushing. I didn't know what that would look like. I didn't know that even being the ACC Player of the Year would have ever been in like my sight of vision, you know, because you don't do it because you're trying to accomplish those awards. You do it for that feeling of like internal satisfaction of when my career is said and done, knowing that my days are limited here. I just want to feel good and I just want to be proud of it. And so I really did commit to the process, even though I did not see results for a really long time.
Yeah.
And then they started to like kind of come into fruition. And then they started to come into sight. And I was like, damn, like I could do this, you know? And then you start feeling like, wow, I really do belong here. Because some days you got to show up even when you don't think you do. And then it was like, oh man, like Florida's like, if you look at like YouTube and the ACC Player of the Year, because back then social media wasn't as big as it is now. It's like you YouTube it and you're like, at the time I'm sitting here thinking like, is Florida State like putting together some kind of like media stuff because they're trying to like support me getting this award? Like it was all these things that I was like, man, like I would have never known that this was even possible. And you're just, again, you're humbled, you're grateful. But life has a funny way of making sure that you stay humbled and grateful. So.
It does, doesn't it? It knows. We say the game knows, life knows. That's for sure.
100%. The game definitely knows, but life knows too. And she, you know what? So, God.
She is, seriously.
Yeah.
But I've noticed that as a theme with Florida State and talking with you in more depth and some of your teammates, like I said, and even Coacha on the show, you get a sense as to why this is the case. Because I've always felt like the Seminoles always just find a way. And like, to your point, it could be just fight, scratch, claw, just as much as possible. They'll get to the World Series or they'll get to whatever the next goal is that they have in mind. And you were at Florida State as it built up to that national championship team that ended up winning in 2018. And I just feel like that's sort of the culture, or at least the vibe that you get from the outside looking in. Does that sound fair to say, or how would you describe it?
Absolutely. I think you're spot on. And I think a lot of that is just a testament to like Lonnie and previously Craig, because Craig Snyder was my coach. He's at Tennessee now. And then Travis Wilson being there. And again, back then, it's the same thing now, just with different people, with Troy Cameron being there as well on staff, and Kaylee Rafter. And I think what Florida State does so well as other programs across the country, is they allow you to be yourself. And that was one of the things, again, like coming back from injury, I had this identity crisis. So not only was I struggling with like outcome and performance on the field, I was struggling with, well, who am I now as a player? Because I don't know anymore.
Yeah.
Like, it's been so long that I felt comfortable. I don't know how to show up. I don't know who that person is. And I went through these things where like I tried to be cool and I tried to be whatever. And like, I don't have swag. Like, I don't have swag. Never have, never will. And one of the things that Travis Wilson said one day, like, it was just like, AP, like, go into the box. Like, you don't have to walk up there any kind of way. Just go into the box, smile like you do, because I was just always happy to be there. And he's like, walk into the box, smile, just do your thing, get your feet set, and like, then freaking drop a tank on him. And I'm like, oh, like, okay, I don't have to be like super swaggy and like all these things. He's like, no, like, just be yourself. So my point to all that is, like, I think Florida State just really allows a platform and safe space for girls to show up every day, whoever they are. And I think, again, the success of an athlete is also like reflective of the ability to show up as that authentic self. And that's when you have the most success, is when you're comfortable in that environment. And so some of the stuff we see too on coaches calls each week, like I've had numerous coaches in all conferences say, yeah, I'm just trying to tell my athletes, like, hey, I don't care if you make a mistake. Like, it's okay. It's safe here, And I think that level of safety and security is huge for us as young people, especially as young women, and figuring that out together. So,
yes. Well put. And then just very timely right now, with, Women's History Month as well. Although for us, that's every month, but it is more top of mind, which is nice that it just gets a little bit more discussion around it, because women and girls, especially women and girls in sport, obviously, are very special.
Yeah, definitely. I almost wore a shirt that said women with, what was it? Something like women with vision become, or no, girls with vision become women in power, or something like that. Like, it's cute.
But that's super cute. Although I do like your Elite Hitters Club shirt as well.
Thank you. Yeah.
The choices. Of course. I feel like I could talk to you all day, seriously. But I won't. I'll respect your time, because we got more softball to tune into and to be all over. But I do play a game with everybody who comes on the show to wrap things up.
Okay.
It's fun. It's simple. It's called Safe or Out.
Okay.
So you're the umpire, essentially. I'll bring up a topic. If you like it or agree with it, you call it safe. If you don't, then you call it out.
All right, let's go.
Okay. So, as a broadcaster, wearing high heels to call games at the field, safe or out?
Immediate toss.
Agree. Well, you mentioned shoe game earlier too, and I was like, ooh, I'm going to ask her about this later. Because to me, it's like, wear some really cool Nikes. I mean, you want them to look cool. Like, you're still trying to be, like you said,
fashionable. Right.
Good. Yeah. But I don't get it for some other sport. Well, I don't know. Like, even seeing basketball coaches wear heels on the court, you're like, it's just hard to relate as like an outdoor sport, I guess. Like,
I agree. Again, I think it looks cool. Like, no judgment there. I'd be tripping. Like,
literally.
So,
Okay. Yeah. Same page there.
Okay.
Second one is transfer portal. Safe or out?
Safe. I would have never transferred. I had opinions on it. I think it's changed now. So I'm going to say safe. And I think everybody has a reason. If you've transferred like a ton of times and had all these things, I think that there's a difference of like the school being the problem and the athlete being the problem, but I'll leave it at that. And I just think sometimes people don't choose the place that's meant for them the first time. Safe.
Yeah. You want everyone to have an experience of feeling safe like you did at Florida State.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay. Last one is bat flips. Safe or out?
Safe or out. Interesting. Bat flips are going to be safe for me. again, I wasn't the cool girl that was doing it, but like fire me up. Like I'm all for a good bat flip. It is what it is. Shouldn't have thrown the pitch there. So
Yeah. I mean, we all have to just wear it sometimes,
Gotcha. You can talk some, junk as they're rounding the bases and stuff. Don't get me wrong, but like
Sure.
It is what it is. So
yeah, I think that's totally fair. Well, thank you so much, Alex. This was great. And I do think that you have some great superpowers too. So thank you for sharing them a little bit today.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Definitely have some good superpowers and some crazy dogs in my house. So it's been fun. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. I love what you do. And yeah, it's been good. We got to have you on our podcast next. So.
Oh my gosh, yes, I would love it. You two are awesome. And this is a dog-friendly show, just for the record. So we're all good.
Perfect. Next time I'll just leave the doors open and they can just walk in and pop in. So.
Great. Wonderful.
All right.
Having Alex on the show was a blast. And I'm really happy about building this coast-to-coast connection, or up the coasts, if you will. Not just for the ACC, but just overall, too, in our sport. And she has versatility, drive, work ethic, resilience, and these are all things that I value. And I think she just has such a unique perspective and experience in her story that I was happy she shared with us. So I hope you learned a lot as well. And with that, let's bring it home. You've been listening to Bleav in Softball, part of Bleav Network and presented by BetOnline. The show is available anywhere you get your podcasts, wherever you listen, including Bleav.com and YouTube too. Subscribe to the show, rate the show, and if you liked it, write a review. Follow us on X and Instagram at Bleav in Softball. Again, that's BLEAV. You can reach out to me personally on X at Jenna Becerra01 and Instagram at Jenna Becerra as well. As always, thank you for tuning in and catch you soon.